So, I have been thinking about the intro to this video for how long exactly? 2 effing days. I swear to God, why the F is it easier for me to make an intro for a video that's disgusting, like human hybrids? Why is it easier for me to make an intro for that fucking video than it's to make an intro for a normal video like this one? Okay, so I'm just gonna begin by saying I am making this video for me, for myself, so that I actually stick to the goals that I have set in my mind. And because I have now made a video on that topic, I can't back out now. I have to follow through. What goals, you might ask? Well, the thing is, I want to learn a new language. I want to learn German. And I'm afraid that I will just not follow through with my goals. That's why I'm telling this to you, so that I actually fucking stick to it. Last year, I did try to learn German, but I just stopped halfway through because, honestly, I got terrified of this bird. And I'm still terrified of this bird. You think I'm joking? Look at this. Look at how many email notifications Duolingo sent me. And that's not even counting the notifications I got on my phone. Well, you might say, well, Jean, you can just disable the email notifications in the settings. Well, I can't do that because I don't want to lose my streak. I like having a streak. So I just have to deal with these notifications. And now I'm gonna download the same app. Great. As much as I hate Duolingo, it's actually pretty good for people who are absolute beginners and want to get to a level where they know at least a little bit of their target language. You know, going from nothing to being able to say, hey, this is my mother, this is my father, and I am a dog. Seriously though, Duolingo is pretty good for absolute beginners. So that's why I'm gonna be using it, even though I do not like the email notification system. And I wanna make a video like a month from now, talking about my progress and seeing how much I progressed. And yeah, it's gonna be a little cool. I don't have very huge expectations of being able to describe the political situation in German at the end of the first month. Of course not. But I want to be able to go from absolute zero to being able to say my name, being able to introduce myself, basic politeness, sorry, thank you, that sort of stuff. And being able to talk about the day I had. Was it good? What did I do during the day? You know what I'm saying? I want to be able to construct like very basic sentences. I also want to be able to understand simple sentences like, how are you doing? How was your day? Just very simple sentences. I want to be able to understand that. I don't think it's a very huge expectation. I do think that this is realistic, and I am a realist. I am planning to spend approximately 30 to 40 minutes each day on Duolingo. I'll also use drops for 5 minutes each day. It's a flashcard thing, but it's a little bit more fancy than that. And if I feel like it, I'll use Anki. I am not planning to spend more than an hour each day on German. I think on average I'll spend like 45 minutes each day learning German. And yeah, let's see how this goes. For a couple of months, all I have been doing on YouTube is researching about how to learn languages, which first of all doesn't make any sense because yours truly, I know 4 languages. The last language I learned was English. It was a while ago. It was a few years ago. But still, I know how to go about it. I know how I did it. All I have to do is repeat that process. But for some reason, YouTube won't stop recommending me videos about language learning. and I won't stop watching them. Am I the only idiot who, instead of learning languages, watches videos about how to learn languages? Am I the only one? If I had just spent that time that I wasted on watching videos about how to learn languages and I had spent it on actually learning a language, I would be fluent in German by now. But instead, here we are. Most of these videos don't even make sense to begin with. I don't know how many of you guys are familiar with the language learning side of YouTube, but it's wild. There are so many videos about how a person learned a language in 3 months. In 3 months. Look, I do not care if your last name is Einstein, you cannot learn a language in 3 months. It is not possible to learn a language in 3 months. But this guy somehow did it by spending, I kid you not, 8 hours each day learning that language. I ask you, how many of you guys have 8 hours to spend each day learning a language? How many of you guys have that time? Because I, for one, don't. I don't know how people do. It is beyond unrealistic. And there are so many videos like it, which seem to imply that learning a language is just something you can do in a few months. It's not. It takes time. For me, it took years to learn English, for example. And even now, I am not very good at it. My vocabulary is not very rich. No, seriously though, there are some videos that are like that and that are not very good. But there are others that are really good and I learned a lot from them. So that's what this video is about. I hope you learned something from this video about learning how to learn languages. One of the coolest things I learned about learning languages is the effect it has on our brain, how it changes our brain. I don't know if you guys have seen the movie Arrival. It is pretty good. I would recommend you check it out. I will spoil the ending, so yeah. It is a science fiction movie where alien ships arrive on Earth and open their doors and wait for humanity to introduce themselves. The only problem is that the aliens don't speak English or any language on Earth. So Luis, who is a linguist hired by the military, decides to learn their language. Instead of teaching the aliens English, they decide to learn and analyze the aliens' language. And in one of the meetings, Luis discusses a very interesting theory about languages. It's called the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, and it basically says that the language you learn influences the way you think. The strong version of that hypothesis says that it influences it a lot, and the weak version is, yes, the language you learn influences the way you think, but not that much. Towards the end of the movie, when Luis asks the alien, "Why are you here?" the aliens respond with, "To help humanity, because in a few thousand years, they'll need humanity's help." So how did they help humanity? What they did was they gave Luis their language, which now allowed Luis to be able to look into the future. She could have visions of the future now. The whole movie is great, by the way. And surprisingly, that theory that I just talked about is real. I first heard about it from an episode of a podcast called Hidden Brain, named Lost in Translation. That particular podcast is an interview of a Russian linguist named Lera. So Lera is a psychologist and a linguist. One of the very interesting experiences she talks about in that podcast is the time when she was working with an Aboriginal community in North Australia. That Aboriginal community is called Pomporel, if I'm not mistaken. In that episode, she talks about learning their language and how remarkably different their language was to our language, for instance. Like, they don't have a word for hello. They don't have a word for left and right like we do in English. I know 4 languages: Hindi, French, Marathi, English. And quite literally, In all of those 4 different languages, we have a word for left and right. And in that Aboriginal community's language, they don't. They also don't have a word for hello. So you can imagine how hard it was for her to even get started. Like, for example, how do you start a conversation in English? You start by saying, hi, hello. You greet them. But there is no word for hello in their language. To greet someone in that language, you have to say where you're heading. Like, for instance, there could be a person who says, where are you heading? And the second person says, oh, about southeast. How about you? And you would reply by saying something like, oh, northwest. And that's their definition of greeting someone. So to even say hello, you need to orient yourself and know at all times where you're heading, in what direction you're going, whether you're going to the north or the south or east or west. You need to know that to say hello. And it was quite hard for Lara to do that. But she kept trying. She kept trying to keep track of where she was heading, because quite literally, people were treating her like she was stupid for not knowing where she was heading. Because this is something that even 5-year-olds could do in that community. But she wasn't able to do that. So people thought that, oh, that's strange. But she kept trying. And in just about a couple of weeks, she noticed something really, really strange. One day she was just walking and she noticed something really strange. She noticed that no matter what she was doing, she had a little bird's eye view of herself on the landscape in the back of her mind. And whenever she turned, she saw herself turning from that bird's eye view. So because of that little map in the back of her mind, it was now quite easy for her to say which direction she was heading. And she explained that to an Aboriginal member, and that person simply responded by saying, yeah, how else would you do it? Oh my God. There's something about that I find so beautiful. Like, for instance, how many of you guys can point to the direction west right now? Do it. How many of you guys know it? You don't. You fucking don't know it. Don't act like you do. Competent adults in our culture cannot orient themselves and cannot tell which cardinal direction is which, but 5-year-olds can do that in that culture. And suddenly, you are now capable of doing that thing. Imagine like if you were in that culture and you were trying to learn their language and learn about their culture, then suddenly you realize that there is a little piece of that culture that's now a part of you, and that's so beautiful. And this was a really cool discovery when it happened. We humans have always compared ourselves to other animals, and we saw how other animals could orient themselves very easily. They know what direction is which. They know whether they want to fly to the north or to the west. They know all that. But human beings can't stay oriented. And for years, people have used some biological excuse like, oh, it's because our nose aren't magnetic, we don't have this or that or blah, 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 blah. But really, if our culture and our language required us to keep track of our orientation, we'll be better at staying oriented. You don't need a magnetic nose to stay oriented. You just need a culture and a language that requires you to stay oriented. That's so cool in my opinion. Oh God. But yeah, quite literally, learning their language changed her brain. and allowed her to become more oriented, something that scientists thought was nearly impossible for human beings. Another interesting thing that she talks about in that podcast is how time is perceived differently by different language speakers. Like, for instance, if English speakers are given a few photographs of a man when he was a child, then a teenager, then a young adult, then an old man, they would arrange it from left to right. If you ask Hebrew or Arabic people to do the same, they would do it from right to left. Interesting. So, quite literally, the language you learn shapes the way you think about time passing. Can you guess how those Aboriginal people visualized time passing? Well, those Aboriginal people were also given the same task, and this is interesting. If they sat facing the east direction, the time would come towards them. So, when arranging the photographs of the newborn, the teenager, the young man, and the old man, they would start from the top with the newborn, then they would go down and place the teenager's photograph, then the young adult, then the old man. If they sat facing the south direction, instead of top to bottom, they did it from left to right. If they sat facing the north direction, then right to left. Can you guess how they visualized time? It's east to west. The time is fixed on the landscape for them. They visualized time on the landscape that they were on. That is very cool. I find this theory to be very interesting. Like, the language you learn changes the way you think. And I can hear someone saying in the background, Jean, that is not language, it is their culture. It is not language that changes the way you think, it's their culture. Those Aboriginal people could very easily not be able to orient themselves if their culture was like, it doesn't really matter that much. If you're that person who thinks that way, I have a question for you. What do you think a language is? Do you think that a language is just a dictionary of words that you can translate back and forth? That's it? Because I don't think so. Language isn't just a dictionary of words. It's a way to communicate our ideas. Every language has a history behind it. Every language has a culture behind it. And it is impossible to separate those two things. Not to mention the fact that there are a lot of phrases and words that are simply not translatable. A very classic example that I could think of is Schadenfreude. It's used to describe a feeling that you get when something bad happens to your enemy or something along those lines. Another example that I could think of is Mendokusai. I hope that I pronounced that correctly. It's Japanese and it sort of translates to I can't be bothered or I don't want to do it or something along those lines. Like, imagine it's a holiday and you are on your bed and you're watching a movie and you are really hungry and you want to eat a bag of chips. So you go to the kitchen and you see that there are no chips and you don't really want to eat anything else, but at the same time, you don't want to go outside to buy chips because somehow it will break that cozy feeling that you have right now. You know what I'm saying? I hope you get it. I am not a native Japanese speaker. I hope I explained that well enough. But yeah, there is no term in English that could describe that particular feeling. There is no one word that could describe that particular feeling. Like there is no word that could describe the feeling of Schadenfreude. I'm just realizing that I'm gonna be learning German and I would need to learn how to pronounce that fucking word. I'll try. I will try my hardest. Anyways, I think that's interesting. And it's kind of a little reason why I want to learn German, because I want to learn all these words that are not translatable to English or French or Hindi. You know what I'm saying? I want to learn all these words. Now, while making this video, I stumbled upon a TikTok by OnlyJS in which she says that people who are multilingual tend to make more money, approximately $100,000 more than someone who's monolingual in their life. I don't know if that's true or not. I doubt it's true. But at the same time, I do know that there are job positions where if you know another language, it could be really helpful to get that particular position. But I don't know. I think that's not true. And the reason why I say that is because language learning requires quite a bit of time. Like, for instance, for me, it took me a while to get a hang of Marathi and English. Even though Marathi and Hindi are very similar, but it still took me a while, and English was even harder. So the point I'm trying to make is that it takes time to learn languages. And people who can set aside that time to learn languages are already people who can afford it, So what I'm trying to say is that rich people are more likely to have learned another language. That's what I'm trying to say. Like, there's this thing where it's classy to learn a new language if you're a monolingual speaker of English, but it's not classy if your native tongue was something other than English and then you learned English. You know what I'm saying? And people who are in that position are already more likely to have more connections and stuff like that. So, that could be a factor. I'm just saying, I haven't looked at the study, okay? It's just something I'm going by because, OnlyJS said it. And, you have to believe these TikTokers. They would never lie to you, right? I don't know. I mean, I'm pretty sure that OnlyJS's facts are facts. I think so. She's a pretty big TikToker. So, yeah. Anyways, that's all that I have for this video. Like this video if you liked it. Comment your thoughts down below about what you think. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video where I talk about medical cannibalism. Bye!